The case against trans fats. The first piece of evidence that trans fats are the worst food in our diet is that, like excess sugar, consuming them will increase your risk of developing all of these diseases: heart disease, stroke, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and dementia. As we said earlier, all of these non-communicable diseases can shorten lifespan. And not only do they shorten life, suffering from them can also detrimentally affect quality of life. But before I go into the second piece of evidence, let me explain what trans fats actually are. Trans fats are formed when liquid vegetable oils, like this bottle of rapeseed oil or vegetable oil, are thickened into margarine or cooking fat. By the way, this is also rapeseed oil. You can see these small yellow flowers on the label. They are the fields of gold that you see when you're driving up the motorway. Fields and fields of this plant, oilseed rape. The seeds of the flower are crushed to extract the oil, and this one, in a dark glass bottle, is less processed, so it's more expensive and better quality than this one. Now, if you put this oil under a microscope, you will find that it is made up of chains of carbon and hydrogen atoms. Although the atoms are not packed together, that's why it's liquid and not solid like butter or lard. So in order to make this oil last a lot longer, hydrogen gas is pumped into it in order to make something called partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil. And that's what I've got here, AVR 60. And it's called partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil. So this oil, which also, by the way, this is what it looks like. This oil is much cheaper to buy than natural fats such as rapeseed or olive oil, and they last much longer. Now, if I had a chicken or a chip shop and I used this natural oil to fry my food, after 2 or 3 days of frying, I will have to change my oil. Why? Because all that cooking turns the oil rancid, and rancid oil smells and it gives the food a bitter taste. If I keep frying with this oil, my food will taste disgusting, I will lose customers, and the business will fail. However, if I fry with this oil, I can fry with it for not 2 or 3 days, but 3 months before I have to change it. That's why I call it the ultimate long life vegetable oil. This oil contains 51% trans fat, although they don't have to tell you this on the label. And it's the biggest selling oil used by chicken shops and independent fast food retailers. They put this in the fryer and it melts down, and that's what they use to fry the food that you may be eating. Trans fats are found in fast foods such as fried chicken, some burgers, fries, donuts, and doner kebabs. So why are they so bad for you? That's my second piece of evidence. Now, as I said, these partially hydrogenated oils are man-made, but humans are designed to eat natural foods and not man-made foods. We don't have the enzymes to process them. So when we eat them, the food goes from our mouth to our stomach and then into the small intestine, where food is then absorbed into the bloodstream. It's in the bloodstream that trans fats cause inflammation within the blood vessels, as if there's an injury. And the body tries to repair the damage by releasing something called LDL cholesterol from the liver. But while the cholesterol is trying to repair the damage, it ends up doing more harm than good by thickening our artery walls, creating a plaque. This plaque can easily cause a blockage, allowing fewer red blood cells, which carry oxygen, to reach vital organs like the heart and the brain. And when the heart is starved of oxygen, what does it cause? A heart attack. And when the brain is starved of oxygen, it causes a stroke. Why am I telling you about this now? Well, because this damage is invisible and will not develop into heart disease for 10, 20 or 30 years. The first sign that arteries are damaged can be serious and fatal. And also, of course, knowledge is power. My third piece of evidence involves the environment. Have you heard of the fatberg? The fatberg is a rock-like mass of waste matter in our sewage system, and it's formed by a combination of non-biodegradable solids, such as wet wipes, being flushed down the toilet, and congealed grease or cooking fat, like this. It causes millions of pounds worth of damage to sewers and millions of gallons of water lost through burst pipes. And it's caused by restaurants using this oil and after months of frying, pouring it down the drain to discard it. Now, if they used a natural oil, natural cooking oil, such as this vegetable oil, if they poured this down the drain after frying, no matter how many wet wipes it was mixed with, it wouldn't solidify and cause a fatberg. But instead of disposing it responsibly by letting it cool down, then putting it in a bin bag, they pour this down the drain so that it solidifies when it reaches the cold sewer, and that causes a great deal of damage. Even strong chemicals cannot dissolve it. It has to be chipped at like an underground mountain. That's why it's called a fatberg. My fourth and final piece of evidence against trans fats is to look at what's happened in other countries. New York were very advanced in public health, and as far back as 2007, they banned partially hydrogenated vegetable oils in foods cooked or used in restaurants in the whole state. It was so effective that 10 years later, they saw a reduction in heart disease in many of the counties where trans fats were banned. So after New York took the lead, food manufacturers in America were told to state on the label if there were trans fats in any packaged food and how much. Many countries went further and either heavily restricted the use of partially hydrogenated oils or banned them completely. See if you can name which countries from their flags. Denmark, Austria, Switzerland, Iceland, Norway, Hungary, Latvia, Thailand, Brazil. The USA and Canada banned partially hydrogenated oils in 2018, and this year the EU will impose restrictions. However, they are still allowed to be cooked with here in the UK. So could you be eating trans fats? Before I tell you where they're found, I'm just going to weigh out 480 grams of AVR60, the best-selling, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. 481. Just add a bit more just to get it completely spot on. I want exactly 480 grams. There we are. I'm going to just turn it round so you can see that's 480 grams of partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil. So, if you eat deep fried fast foods like fried chicken and French fries from high street chicken shops and chip shops, most likely, yes, you will be eating trans fats. It can also be found in donuts, icing on cakes, mechanically recovered meats like doner kebabs, some nuggets and cheap burgers. Large chains like McDonald's and KFC used to fry in partially hydrogenated oils, but they stopped several years ago. However, we don't know if they're still using them in coatings on chicken or nuggets or in other ways. And some portions of chips have been found to contain 10 grams of trans fat. So if you eat 2 portions of chips per week after school, that's 20 grams, isn't it? How much trans fat would you consume every 12-week term? 240 grams. Now remember that AVR60 contains 51% trans fat. So in order to consume 240 grams of trans fat, how much AVR60 do you need to consume? That's right, 480 grams. This is what you'll be consuming if you have 2 portions of chips per week fried in this oil every term. Before I conclude my case, here's a short film from some QE boy students I spoke to when they were in year 8.
The dangers of consuming trans fats have been known for years. They have been proven to increase the risk of developing heart disease. Yet many people are consuming them every day without even knowing it. We decided to find out how much trans fats can be found in a portion of chips. Trans fats are produced when hydrogen gas is pumped into a vegetable oil such as rapeseed oil, producing partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil, which changes the chemical structure and makes the oil last a lot longer. So it can be used for deep frying for months and increases the shelf life of foods. A partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil called AVR60 contains 51% trans fats. We are told that this is the top-selling partially hydrogenated rapeseed oil by the country's leading wholesaler. To conduct our experiment, first we peeled the potatoes and cut them into fries. Then we weighed the raw chips and they weighed 350 grams. Then we weighed the heated oil in a pan so that we would know how much oil is absorbed. It was 469 grams. We then cooked the chips and took them out and weighed them again. They now weighed 217 grams because a lot of the water from the raw potatoes had evaporated. We also weighed the oil to see how much had been absorbed into the chips. We found that the oil in the pan now weighed 446 grams. That means that this portion of chips absorbed 23 grams of oil, which is 12 grams of trans fat. A reminder that the AVR60 label shows that it contains 16 grams saturated fat, 30 grams monosaturated fat, and 3 grams polyunsaturated fat, which adds up to 49 grams. However, the product contains 99.9% fat. So, what is the other 51%? Trans fats. Although none of us had had lunch, None of us fancied eating one of these chips. Partially hydrogenated vegetable oils containing trans fats are banned in all these countries, and very soon they will be banned in the EU, but we won't be in it. It's about time the UK protected its residents and young people against these killer fats and bin trans fats from our food. Join our campaign to get them banned.
That concludes the case against trans fats.